Hey YouTube, it's Guy, and I am back today with a little bit of a watch tutorial, I guess I could say. In a previous video, I did a review of a Seiko watch, the SCC019, or was it the SSC019? I can never keep these model numbers straight, but regardless, an upcoming review, I'm going to be doing the SARB033. Both of those watches feature this same bracelet, which is Seiko's pin and collar bracelet. And in that previous video, I had mentioned how much of a pain it can be to resize your pin and collar bracelet. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a tutorial on how to go about resizing these bracelets. Here's the SARB033 watch, and you can see it's a very popular watch, and it comes on this metal bracelet. And getting the links changed over to fit your wrist on this type of bracelet is very difficult if you've never done it before. Once you've done it a couple of times, it's really not a big deal. So hopefully I can sort of help show you guys how to do that in this video. It's going to be hard because we're dealing with some really teeny tiny little pieces. But on my table here you can see I have a series of totally disassembled links from a bracelet. Let me see if I can get this all lined up a little bit more straight, just to satisfy my OCD. So yeah, what we have here on the table is 4 links right in the middle, and adjacent to those links you can see there's a pin on the bottom side and the collar on the top side. So those are all 3 pieces of your bracelet. That's how this bracelet is held together. Once it's, hammered all together and on your wrist, that is the system, those pins and collars. Before we talk about how to manipulate these things, I'm gonna tell you you're gonna need some tools. First of all, you're gonna want some tweezers. I have metal tweezers here. Metal tweezers probably aren't the best choice. If you could find plastic tweezers, that might be better. But this is all that I have available, and I never went and bought a set of plastic tweezers, but you're going to need tweezers nonetheless. Other than tweezers, you're going to need some punches. It's this little tool set. It comes with a hammer with a nylon side and a steel side. The tool set comes with 3 punches, a small, medium, and large punch, and you can tell which is which. I'll see if I can get my camera to focus on that. On the bottom, it's delineated with these little lines. There's no line on the bottom of the rightmost one. There's 1 line and 2 lines for small, medium, and large. And it also comes with this plastic vise or block. Basically, it's so you can set your watch band in there, and it'll help you hold it steady while you're hammering away on this stuff. You might also need a set of needle nose pliers. I use this. It's a Leatherman. So there's a number of tools built into it. This is a Leatherman, I think the model name is on here somewhere, Wingman, Leatherman Wingman. It's a really nice multi-tool. I'll put a link down to all of these things on Amazon below in the videos notes section, so if you want to find any of these things. But you might need a needle nose pliers. I'll explain why. I probably won't need it, but the first time I did it, I did. So I'll explain why you might need that. You also might want some magnification. I use a visor style magnifier, and I can't really fit that into frame here. I have it on my desk. It's real big, and I'm zoomed way in. So I don't know. I'll try. You probably won't be able to see it very well, but yeah, you see it's like this visor you wear on your head. It's got a strap. You tighten it up on the back. Yeah, way too big to really see it, but I'll link that as well. And finally, if any of your tools are magnetized, you might want a demagnetizer, and that's this little gizmo here. It's a cheap little tool. You set your tools on it, click the button, and it will demagnetize them. I'll also link to that. But primarily what you're going to need are tweezers and this hammer and punch set, and of course your watch. Now, let me zoom in here, and this quality is going to degrade because I'm actually physically using the zoom on my camera. But I think this is best to illustrate what we're looking at. So you can see we have the link. And then we have up on top, let me get a better pointer device. So we have the link. Up on top here is the collar and then the pin. Now, the way all this works is on the back side of your link, there's going to be an arrow. When you're punching out the pin, you're going to drive it in the direction of the arrow. So in this case, we're going to punch, this would be the top. Technically, I guess it's the bottom on screen, but you set it into your block, and when you're hammering it, you'd be punching it out that way. The side with the arrow, the little collar slips in there. And this is why we're going to need these tweezers. So I'm going to pick up one of the collars, and I'm going to try and slide it into that hole on camera. It slides right into that hole. So now that collar is in that cavity, or that hole. See that? Then we take another link and we slide them together like so, and you gotta kind of hold it. Now, if we flip it over, you see these arrows? When you're reinserting your pin, you want to go from the opposite direction. The arrows are for when you're driving the pin out. When you're putting the pin back in, you go the opposite way. So you take your pin and you go back in through the links. I'm totally falling out of frame here. I'm sorry. It's very difficult to see. Now that's about as far as I'm going to be able to get it in, because the collar is more narrow around than the pin, right? That's what provides the friction. So then what we would do, what I find easiest anyway, is I just take my, I'm going to zoom out here. I take my little block gizmo that came with my tool set, and I just kind of push the pin up against it to get it pushed in most of the way through. So now it's pushed in a little bit, but it's not all the way through. Or you can set it on there, like I'm going to do here, and you just hammer it in with the nylon side. So now you can see, let's get that out of the background, that the pin has been driven through that collar and all the way through the two links. Now, I would take the vice block gizmo. I would set the link in there. Of course, we'd be working on the whole bracelet, not just a piece of it. But for the purposes of illustration, it's easier for me to work on these little pieces. So let me zoom in a little bit. Now, I would take the smallest punch. And what I would do, because it's not totally flush all the way in there. So I would use the punch, and I would hammer it in carefully so as to not scratch my bracelet links. There we go. Just so that it's recessed. Just recessed inside the link. And we check the other side, and it's perfect. And, that's it. So now we just go on to the next one. The side with the arrow is where the collar fits. It won't fit in. It won't fit in the other side. So that hole on that side is bigger than the hole on the opposing side. So we take our tweezers, drop this is not on camera, is it? It's very difficult to line stuff up. Drop that collar into that hole. There it goes. The collar's in the hole. And we take our link, flip it over to just verify. Again, when you're reinserting it, you go in the opposite direction of the arrow. So we can see the arrows down there. So we're going to insert it from the top, or the opposing side. Now, it's not held in there at all yet. It's very, it's very loose. It pulls right in and out. So now we use like the side of this little block to kind of push it in a bit. You don't have to push it in all the way. You just got to get it started. You'll feel it. You'll feel like the friction or whatever. And then we can set it on there. And again, using the nylon side of our hammer, tap it in until it's flush with the side of the link. Then I will use one of the punches to just drive it in a little bit deeper. Kind of wants to move around down there. It's annoying to do. There we go. Now again, we've got that link. There we go. Now we have that pin driven through the collar and the link, and that's held together. Now we'll do the last one. Same process. Well, actually, before I do that one, I want to illustrate a couple of points. So we've got 3 of the 4 put together. Now, if you use the wrong size punch to take it apart, and that's the important thing, right? Taking it apart. So to take it apart, you find the arrows. In this case, we can see those arrows there. And you'd put the bracelet in your little vise block. Maybe that slot. Yeah, that slot's a little bit tighter. Now we take our punch and we'd set it in there. And we would just drive out that pin. Well, if you use a punch that's too big around, after you drive out that pin, what's going to happen is your little tiny collar gizmo is going to get stretched out because it's a split collar. And I'll try to show you that, illustrate that on camera here. Give me just a sec to get it all lined up. There we go. Almost there, almost there. Okay, now, can I get the camera to focus? That is the question. And I dropped the collar. Alright, almost got it. Problem is, I can't get the camera to focus while I'm holding the collar. So... Alright. No, there's not a chance in hell I'm going to get my camera to focus, so you're going to have to take my word on this. The collar is a split little piece of metal. Maybe I can illustrate it with something bigger, like a piece of paper. Basically, because this is sort of important to understand. Alright, so you see this piece of paper? The collar is basically a tube, right? And one side of the tube is split like this. It's not a solid ring. So what happens is if you drive a punch through that's too big, you stretch open the collar. If you stretch open the collar, it won't be tight enough to put friction on the pin, and it'll just fall apart eventually. It might not hold, period. It might hold a little bit, and eventually the pin will back its way out because the collar is stretched open, and the pin will just fall out, is what I was trying to illustrate by zooming in on the collar there. So what you can do, if you use a punch that's too big, and you stretch out your collar, this is why you might need needle nose pliers. You just pick up your collar in your needle nose pliers gently, and you just, when it's in there, you just give it you want to get it all the way in the needle nose. and you just give it a squeeze. You don't murder it, don't flatten it out, but give it a squeeze, and that should tighten the collar back down, so that the pin won't go through it too easily. And you can test it out by taking your pin in one hand and your collar in the other, and just see if the pin slides through the collar. If it's too tight to just slide through with finger pressure, your collar is tight enough. But anyway, that's one point I wanted to illustrate was when you drive these out, suppose this was the entire bracelet, you take your punch and you put it in there, and you take your hammer and you drive out that pin. Well, if you stretch that collar, again, it could A, get stuck on the punch, and then it makes it hard to get the punch out, or B, the punch could just stretch it out. So use the smallest punch in your tool set, is what I'm trying to get at here. So yeah, another little be careful, kind of tip I can give you besides that is when you're taking them apart. I'm going to set the collar in this last link that we haven't reassembled yet. And trust me, you're going to want tweezers. Particularly not magnified tweezers. I thought I demagnified these, but they seem to be holding a magnet. A little bit of a magnetic charge still. So the collar is inside there, but it'll slide out. See how easily that just slid right out? So I'm going to slide it back in there. And I'm going to put this together. So when we're knocking the pin out, okay, the bracelet is going to be in our little vise block like this, right? And we would have been working on this one, I suppose. You'd be driving that pin out, and when the pin falls out, hold your bracelet. Don't let it just come apart yet, and set it down flat, and take it apart, and then gently let that collar fall out. Otherwise, you might risk losing it, is my point. You see how I did that? I just slid it apart and gently let it fall out. When I first took these apart, I didn't realize that this collar contraption was a piece of the puzzle. I thought I was just punching out pins that were maybe a little fatter on one end, and that was what was holding the friction together. So, when I took it apart, I wasn't paying attention. I went like this. A collar fell out. God knows where it went. I had to call Seiko and get some extra links, which is why I have 4 extra links here, because I only took 1 link out of my bracelet. This bracelet for this watch here, the SARB033. It's a pretty small bracelet. I only needed to take 1 link out, but because I lost a collar, I had to call them and request for some extra links be sent to me, which they were more than happy to help me with. So, that's another thing to keep in mind. If you do bend a pin or lose a collar or mess up a link, scratch up a link or whatever, call up Seiko and tell them you need a couple of links, and they'll send you the links with the collar and a pin in the mail within a couple of days. So yeah, that's another thing to keep note of. Third thing to keep note of, and this was important, another mistake I made. I'm going to put my collar in this piece here real quick. All right, so I have my collar in this link. I have the rest of my links, and I have them together. Let me zoom in. Now you can see those arrows, right? When you're putting your pin back in, make sure you remember, go in the opposite direction. Where's a pointer? If we could see through this, we would know the collar is right here, okay? It's in the cavity on this side. The reason we want to drive it through from the opposing side, and this is a mistake I made. Let me see if I can get it started real quick. I can't find the hole. That's what she said. Alright, so now it's started. The reason we want to start from that side is because now we're only pushing this much of the pin through that very tight friction of the collar, okay? If we tried to insert it from the other side, let me slide it in there, we'd be trying to push that much of the pin all the way through the collar. Guess what happens when you try to do that? If you guessed this pin will bend, you are correct. You will bend the hell out of this pin. So if you were to pick it up like this, and like I showed you, pushing it on the side of your little block gizmo to get it started, it'll bend right over like a little piece of plastic or something. So make sure you're driving it back in the opposite direction of the arrows. Otherwise, you will most likely bend up your pin. So it's real simple. Once you have it started like this, you just give it a push on something firm, and you'll start it. But you don't got to get it all the way. Like, see, I got it started, but it's still, it's still sticking out there quite a bit. Then you set it in your little block, and again, using the nylon side or the plastic side of your hammer so as to not scratch up your links. Drive it in the rest of the way. And then, I like to use my punch at the very end to get that pin just a little bit below the very outside edge. And that's it. It's in. Super simple. Now, we put it together, but when you get yours, you're going to want to take it apart, right? So let's pretend this was an entire full-length bracelet. You'd look on the underside and say, okay, there's the arrows, right? See them? Make sure I'm focused. So we'd set those arrows, we'd set it into this block with the arrows pointing down, and we'd get our smallest little punch gizmo. Now there are holes in this block, right? See the holes there? So those holes are there so you have somewhere to punch the pin through. Otherwise, the pin's going to run into the block. But it's, just as simple as, I'll punch out this end one here. Just start hammering. Now it's going to start popping out, so make sure you get it lined up with a hole in the block. You see how it won't slide any further? It's because my pin is popped out a little bit, and now it's aligned with one of those holes in the block. So you just drive it all the way through. You'll feel it give. Now, again, you want to hold it together, because you're going to pull it out, and your pin is going to be in the block. When I lift up the block, the pin's going to be on the table there, because it fell through the hole. Set your bracelet down on the table, and just dump out that collar. You see how the collar just fell out nice and easy there? And that's it. That's all you have to do. I mean, once you've done it a few times, it's super easy. Again, I made all kinds of errors. I tried reinserting the pins from the wrong direction and bent the pins. I didn't know the collars were even in there, and I lost collars. I used punches that were too big, and I stretched out the collars. I tried to do it without tweezers, and I couldn't even get my fingers on the collar to stick them into that little hole. I mean, I did everything wrong you could do wrong. But I eventually figured it out, and it's not hard. Don't be too intimidated. So for storage, I like to take all my extra links and just assemble them so that no pieces can go missing. So I'm just going to put this back together before we log off and get it ready for long-term storage or whatever. So again, when you're putting this in, the side that doesn't have the arrows, that's where that goes. And then just push on the side of your block to get it started. Once it's started, set it in your block so you have something to hold it. Using the plastic end of your hammer, drive it in. Once it's all the way in, take your punch to just set it down. You don't have to do this, but I like to. Just set it down a little below flush. And that's it. I mean, it couldn't be any easier, right? Well, when you don't know what you're doing, it seems impossible. I had a horrible time trying to do this. But that's it. Then you can get your, in this case, SARB033 or any of the Seiko watches with this pin and collar system sized up. Now, regarding this bracelet in particular, or all of them, there's a couple of other things to note. Number one, this one only has 2, some of them have 4 micro adjustment holes. I don't know if you can see them just behind the push button. So that'll, some of them have 4 little holes. There's a little spring bar in there, and you can move it forward and backwards to gain or lose a little bit of adjustability. So when you're doing this, keep in mind where this little micro adjustment is set, because if you have it all the way in or all the way out, it'll be snugger or tighter than you might want, and you'll take out 1 or 2 too many links without having messed around with the micro adjustment. Also, put it on at first and see which side you need to take links out of. I like the clasp to sit right center on my wrist, and then I like the face of the watch to be right center on the top of my wrist. So in my case, I took on this watch just 1 link out of, I want to say the clasp was sitting a little bit south on my wrist, so I took a link out of this side so it would bring it over. On the other one, the SSC019, I had to take out 2 links, and again, the clasp was sitting a little south on my wrist. So I took both links out of this side to bring it around. So, try it on and figure out which side do I want to take links out of. You might take a link out of here and a link out of here. You might take 2 links out of one side. Depending on how you have it set with the micro adjustments, that could factor into exactly how you do it. But, keep that in mind. That's just something you're going to have to play around with, basically. You'll figure out which way it works best for you. But that's it. It's not super hard when you know what you're doing. I know that this was probably going on a 30-minute long video to explain it, but trust me, if you watched the whole thing, you will be able to resize your bracelets on your Seiko pin and collar bracelet systems, really easily. Again, you'll just need, at a bare minimum, this hammer, punch, and block tool, and tweezers. And, maybe a needle nose plier if you stretch out a collar, maybe the magnifying visor if you got bad eyesight, and maybe the Demagnetizer gizmo if, for example, your tweezers are magnetized, or you'll never be able to get the collar off the tweezers. That's why plastic tweezers are better. Number 1, metal tweezers could scratch up the finish on your bracelet. Number 2, plastic tweezers can't become magnetized. So that's, the upside to the plastic tweezers. But hey, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to adjust the link and collar Seiko bracelets. And if you have any questions or comments, post them down below in the comments section. If you are looking where to buy any of these tools, I'll put links in the notes section below the video. And, as always, please like and share this video. And if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. I come out with watch-related content on nearly a weekly basis. I'm also going to be doing some reviews on some other things, some EDC or everyday carry items. Like I've got a review planned for some pocket carryable flashlights by Streamlight. I'll probably also do some handgun reviews at some point, and a lot of other stuff. So there's going to be lots of content coming. It's not all going to be watch content, but yeah, go ahead and subscribe and keep an eye out for that. I appreciate it. Bye.